Have you ever had one of those days, or, maybe if we're being completely honest here, one of those entirely exhausting careers where you feel like you are just doing the jobs of five different people?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And the absolute worst part, the part that really just grinds you down over the years, is that the actual work you were hired to do, like the core skill that makes you uniquely valuable, it just gets squeezed into your evenings.
Yeah. Pushed to the absolute margin.
Exactly. You spend the entire day managing the noise, putting out fires, answering a million questions, and then only when the sun goes down, when the office is totally empty and you're already completely drained, do you finally get to do the real work.
Which is just a brutal cycle.
It really is. So if you are listening and you're nodding your head right now, or maybe wincing a little bit in recognition, this deep dive is entirely for you. Because today, we are unpacking exactly why that happens.
And we're going on a journey, really, from absolute workplace chaos to a state of, well, profound creative restoration.
Yes. We are exploring a conceptual yet highly grounded technological solution that might honestly just change how we think about professional work from the ground up.
It really is a profound shift in perspective. What we're exploring today is this fascinating case study. It's a fictional but entirely technologically plausible story about a highly successful woman named Lee.
Right.
And Lee's a principal architect, and she really represents a transition that so many highly skilled professionals desperately need right now, which is the transition from reactive firefighting to proactive, deeply focused design thinking.
Yeah, that reactive firefighting. I mean, her daily fragmentation is something so many of you will instantly recognize, regardless of your industry.
Exactly. But the solution presented in this scenario, it isn't about doing more. I mean, it isn't about hustling harder or, finding a new app to hyper-optimize your calendar.
Or just drinking way more coffee.
Right. It's about doing things fundamentally differently. It's about changing the very architecture of how work flows toward us.
I really want to start right there with Lee, because she is a principal architect, which means she is operating at the absolute pinnacle of her profession. But before we get into her pain points, we really need to deconstruct the Hollywood myth of what that level of success actually looks like.
Oh, the cinematic ideal.
Right. Because when you picture a top-tier architect, you probably picture someone in a pristine, minimalist office.
Wearing a black turtleneck, usually.
Always the black turtleneck.
Hmm.
And they're leaning over this massive, completely unblemished oak desk, sketching, I don't know, a sweeping museum roof on vellum, completely lost in a flow state of pure, uninterrupted creative genius.
It is a beautiful, deeply romanticized image. And the truth is, Lee does actually do that work, that creative spatial problem solving. That is her genius.
It's why she got into the field.
Exactly. It's the core reason she became an architect, and it's what she's brilliant at. But the startling reality of this case study is that deep design work makes up, at best, maybe a quarter of what she actually does in a given day.
If she's lucky.
If she's very lucky. The grinding reality of her daily life is completely different. To understand why a principal architect, or really any senior professional, struggles so deeply with burnout, we have to look at the anatomy of professional overload.
Right.
Because a principal architect doesn't actually have one job. They are burdened with 5 concurrent work streams, and these are running simultaneously, all fighting for their attention every single hour of the day.
5 concurrent jobs. Let's break those down, because this is where the mirage of the, single profession really shatters into pieces. Job number 1 is the client-facing work. And we're not just talking about shaking hands here. This is high-stakes emotional intelligence, right?
I mean, this is the relationship building that keeps the entire firm alive. It's the initial pitch meetings, the endless phone calls, reassuring anxious developers.
High-stakes presentations to zoning boards.
Right, the muddy site visits. It's all about winning the client's trust. You have to capture the incredibly subtle nuance of what they actually want versus what they say they want, and constantly manage their expectations when, budgets inflate or timelines stretch.
Because things always go wrong on a site.
Always. And you simply cannot automate human trust. It requires Lee's physical, emotional, and cognitive presence in the room.
Right. And then job number 2 is the actual design work, the part she actually went to school for all those years.
The core competency, yeah. This is conceptualizing the building itself, detailing the intricate drawings, creating the physical and digital models, and resolving incredibly hard spatial, structural, and aesthetic problems.
The stuff that requires actual brain power.
Yes. Deep cognitive focus. It's the work that demands a quiet mind.
Which she never gets. Because then we hit job number 3, which is where things start to get heavily administrative and, frankly, dangerous. Documentation and compliance.
But this stream is entirely unforgiving, and it is not glamorous in the slightest.
Not at all.
It involves writing dense specifications, managing material schedules, drafting complex tender documents, navigating these labyrinthine local building codes.
Securing council approvals.
Right. It's heavily text-based, highly consequential, and legally binding. I mean, a single mistake here, like a transposed number on a material spec, or just a misread clause in a municipal zoning code that can cost millions of dollars.
Or halt a project for months.
Or even invite devastating litigation. It's incredibly stressful.
Which brings us to job number 4, coordination. Because as we know, an architect doesn't build a building in a vacuum.
Far from it. An architect is essentially the mayor of a highly specialized temporary village.
I love that analogy, the mayor of a temporary village.
Yeah, because they have to manage an entire ecosystem of consultants. You've got structural engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers, landscape architects, acoustic consultants, interior designers.
It's a massive team.
Huge. And Lee's job is reviewing all of their disparate work, constantly chasing them for their responses, and resolving the inevitable clashes.
Right, like when one guy's work physically ruins another guy's work.
Exactly. For instance, when the acoustic consultants required dropped ceiling panels, physically conflict with the mechanical engineer's massive HVAC ductwork.
Someone has to fix that.
And that someone is Lee. She is the one who has to mediate that dispute and redesign the space to accommodate both.
And finally, there is job number 5, which is business management. Because at the end of the day, Lee isn't just drawing pictures. She is running a company.
Exactly. That means managing her internal staff, allocating resourcing for upcoming quarters, generating invoices, writing fee proposals.
Negotiating health insurance for her employees.
Yes, and constantly, obsessively monitoring the cash flow of the business to ensure payroll clears next week.
So if you are listening to this right now and you're sort of mapping these 5 streams onto your own life, maybe your streams are slightly different, but the fragmentation is exactly the same. You can clearly see how crushing this is.
It's overwhelming.
It's not just spinning plates. It's more like, being a deep-sea diver who is simultaneously trying to navigate the crushing pressure of the ocean floor while also being forced to radio up to fix the boat's engine, read the weather radar, negotiate the price of the diesel fuel, and mediate a fistfight between the deckhands.
That is a highly accurate, if slightly terrifying, way to visualize the cognitive strain.
Yeah.
And here is the cruel paradox of professional excellence that makes this so dangerous.
The bottleneck issue.
Yes. Because Lee is highly trusted. Because she has spent years proving her excellence and her reliability, absolutely everything funnels directly through her.
Every single stream.
Every single one of those 5 streams has its own relentless email thread, its own cascading deadlines, its own massive document sets, and its own cast of characters demanding immediate answers. She has become the ultimate bottleneck.
But she's not the bottleneck because she's bad at her job.
No, exactly. She's not the bottleneck because she's inefficient, or because she's a micromanager, or because she's slow. She is the bottleneck because her expert judgment is genuinely required at every single one of those junctures.
That is just such a devastating realization. The ultimate reward for being great at your job is that absolutely nothing can happen without you.
It's a trap.
So let's talk about how this bottleneck manifests in the physical reality of a workday. Let's talk about the email avalanche, because this is where the true cost of the chaos is calculated. We aren't talking about 10 or 20 emails a day here.
Not even close.
Lee is realistically receiving hundreds of emails a day across every single project she's running. Clients, consultants, the city council, angry contractors on site, her internal team, her accountant, they are all flooding her inbox simultaneously.
And what is really vital to understand here is that an email is not just an email. We tend to think of an inbox as a single, homogeneous list of tasks to be cleared, just a checklist.
Right, just get to inbox 0.
Right. But if we categorize this flood, we actually see 5 distinct types of demands that are all heavily masquerading as just an email. First, there's the needs judgment email. And this is the core architectural decision that only Lee can make.
Right, something like, the site contractor found an unexpected bedrock layer. Do we blast it, which delays us 3 weeks, or do we redesign the entire foundation for a shallower footing? That requires her deep expertise.
Precisely. That is a high-level strategic decision. Now, second, you have the needs acknowledging email. This is purely mechanical. It's someone confirming they received the latest plan revisions or providing a minor, totally expected status update.
So it doesn't really need a reply.
It requires no deep thought, no action, but it still demands a moment of visual processing, and it clutters the interface. Third is the needs-chasing email.
Oh, the absolute bane of professional existence. Where is the structural response? We asked for it 4 days ago.
Exactly. This forces Lee to act as a human alarm clock. She has to carry the mental load of other people's responsibilities and deadlines, constantly pinging them to ensure the project doesn't stall.
Which is exhausting.
It is. Fourth, we have the needs reading email. Now, this is never a quick scan. This is a 20-page acoustic consultant's report or a dense, poorly formatted building code clause that absolutely must be digested and understood before the project can safely move forward.
You can't just skim that.
No, you really can't. And finally, the fifth type, the needs drafting email. This requires Lee to stop everything, sit down, and manually type out meeting minutes, a formal cover letter, a legally binding fee variation, or, a lengthy project update to an anxious client.
So you've had these 5 wildly different cognitive demands: high-level strategy, road acknowledgement, annoying follow-ups, deep reading, and original writing, and they're all just jumbled together chronologically in one inbox. It is. And this brings us to what I think is really the most critical part of this entire discussion: the true cost of context switching. Because it is so easy to trick ourselves. We say, oh, it just takes 30 seconds to read that quick email and fire off a reply. It's not a big deal. But that is a profound lie we tell ourselves to survive the day, isn't it?
It is a massive, incredibly destructive cognitive fallacy. This isn't about losing 30 seconds of physical time to type a quick response. It is entirely about the neurobiological reentry cost.
The reentry cost. Break that down for us.
Well, when we look at studies on knowledge workers, they reveal a staggering truth about how the human brain functions. Think of your working memory like the RAM in a computer.
Okay.
When you're deep in creative thought, say, you're actively resolving the spatial geometry, a complicated staircase that needs to meet fire egress codes while still looking elegant. Your brain has loaded dozens of highly specific variables into its active working memory.
Right. You are holding the whole 3-dimensional puzzle in your head at once.
Yes. Now, your inbox pings. You look over, and it's an email demanding an urgent fee variation for a completely different project. Your brain has to drop all the variables of the staircase, completely switch tracks, load the financial variables of the other project, assess the tone of the client, and draft the response.
And then you go back to the staircase.
But when you finally hit send and try to return to the staircase problem, you absolutely do not just pick up where you left off. The variables were dropped. Your brain has to painstakingly reload that complex state of deep focus.
How long does that actually take?
It takes anywhere from several minutes to over 20 minutes for a human brain to climb back into that peak state of flow and reload all those architectural constraints into working memory.
20 minutes. Let's just pause on that. If it takes 20 minutes to recover from one single interruption, and you get interrupted just 3 times in an hour, which is incredibly conservative for a modern professional, your entire hour of deep, meaningful work is effectively destroyed. It's completely gone.
Completely eradicated. You have spent the entire hour merely treading water, transitioning between states without ever achieving depth. Now, multiply that reentry cost by 100 interruptions a day.
It's mathematically impossible.
It illustrates the sheer impossibility of the standard working model for top professionals. You literally do not have enough hours in the day or enough cognitive bandwidth in your brain to survive that level of constant fragmentation.
Which perfectly explains the tragic shape of Lee's actual day. If we contrast what we said earlier about the standard architectural ideal where design is the priority, the core function, with the grinding reality she actually faces, it's pretty bleak.
Extremely.
The mornings, they are entirely consumed by client fire drills, urgent calls from the site, unexpected material shortages, the why haven't we heard back from the city emails. Her peak morning energy is just burned on pure reaction.
Just putting out fires.
Exactly. Then midday is eaten alive by coordination. Herding the cats, chasing the consultants, sitting in endless Zoom meetings that inevitably run 30 minutes over schedule. And the afternoon, that's sacrificed to the altar of compliance and documentation, forcing her exhausted brain to read those dense 20-page engineering reports when all she wants to do is just close her eyes.
And so we arrive at the inevitable, universally recognized tragic outcome.
Right.
The actual architectural judgment, the pure creative design that is the entire basis of her immense value, and frankly, her original passion for the field, gets pushed to the absolute furthest margins of the day.
It only happens at 7 o'clock at night.
Exactly. It happens when the sun goes down, the office empties out, the phone finally stops ringing, and the inbox slows to a trickle. That is when she begins her real job. Or, far worse, she is simply too exhausted, and the deep work doesn't happen at all.
This is the reality. This is the baseline of exhaustion, the sheer weight of the mechanical throughput that we were starting from. But here is where this deep dive gets incredibly fascinating.
Because there's a way out.
Yes. Because the solution presented in this case study isn't to give Lee a better, more colorful calendar app. It isn't a faster laptop or a new method for time blocking or some hustle culture productivity hack telling her to wake up at 4 a.m. and take an ice bath.
Definitely no ice baths required here.
No. The solution is a conceptual, private, automated assistant, a technology called Intern 100.
And we must emphasize right up front how radically different Intern 100 is from what you might expect when you hear the words AI assistant.
Yeah, because we all have a very specific image in our heads now.
Right. Today, when we hear those words, we immediately think of a massive cloud-based tool. We think of something integrated directly into a web browser, designed by a mega corporation to parse our personal data on their remote servers in order to train their next model.
Like a chatbot living in the cloud.
Exactly. But Intern 100 is the antithesis of that. It is not a bigger, smarter email client living on a screen. It is envisioned as a quiet, tireless, completely private entity that exists locally.
I really want to dig into the physical hardware of this device because the specific design choices are fascinating and honestly highly intentional. It is not an immersive pair of augmented reality goggles that take over your vision.
No.
It's not a sleek, vibrating smartwatch. It consists of two very simple, almost aggressively boring physical components.
They are very boring.
Right. First, there is a waist unit. It's a small box about the size of a standard smartphone, and it just clips onto Lee's belt or sits in her pocket. And plugging into the top of that waist unit is a completely standard, unassuming, wired USB headset. Literally the exact kind of headset you'd see on an operator in a 1990s call center.
It is intentionally anti-sci-fi in its physical appearance.
Yeah.
There are no glowing screens on this device.
Yeah.
There's no physical keyboard. There are no Bluetooth pairing issues or cables tethering Lee to a laptop on a desk. It is simply the secure waist unit, the headset in her ear, and her voice.
Okay, I have to stop you here because I think a lot of people listening are having the exact same reaction I am. In an era of incredibly sleek, invisible tech set, I mean, we have smart rings that track our sleep. We have spatial computing headsets that overlay digital worlds onto our living rooms. Why on earth would anyone design a clunky waist clip and a basic wired USB headset? It sounds almost retro. It sounds like a massive step backward in UX design.
It is a vital question,
Yeah.
and it gets to the absolute core of why our current technology is failing us. The answer is that the core design constraint of Intern 100 is not sleek aesthetics. It is absolute privacy and zero distraction.
Zero distraction.
Think about the nature of a screen. If you put a screen on a device, it instantly becomes an engine for distraction. A screen fundamentally demands to be looked at.
It's true, you can't ignore a screen.
Right. It invites notifications, it encourages infinite scrolling, and it forces visual context switching. By limiting the screen entirely, the device forces a purely audio, intention-driven interface. You can't scroll a headset. You can't get lost in a headset.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the philosophy of restraint goes even deeper than just the lack of a screen.
Mm-hmm.
It is fundamentally built around the concept of total silence.
Yes, the immense power of total silence. This is where I started to really fall in love with the concept. The design dictates that this intern does not ping. It doesn't buzz on your wrist to tell you an email arrived. It doesn't flash a little red notification badge in your peripheral vision. It is a strictly button-triggered design.
Exactly.
Why is that absolute silence so crucial for someone in Lee's position?
Because every single ping, every vibration, every visual flash is a literal theft of your attention. The philosophy of architectural restraint behind this design acknowledges a fundamental truth. Lee's attention is her most precious, finite, and valuable resource.
It's all she has to sell, really.
Yes. Standard cloud tools, the apps we use every day, are fundamentally designed in an attention economy. They're engineered to interrupt you and extract your attention because your engagement is how they generate value.
They want you looking at them.
Intern 100, on the other hand, sits in total unbroken silence. It fiercely protects her deep creative focus by absorbing the constant daily interruptions without ever announcing them.
It's just working in the background.
It is doing massive amounts of work in the background, but it never interrupts her until she actively chooses to engage by physically pressing a button on the waste unit. It speaks only when spoken to.
It's like having an incredibly competent assistant who is sitting in the corner of your office, diligently sorting your mail and writing your letters, but who inherently knows better than to ever burst into your space while you're sketching a complex design.
That's exactly what it is.
Now, you mentioned standard cloud tools, and we really need to contrast this private system with those specifically regarding privacy and encryption. Because this isn't just about avoiding targeted ads on your social media feed. This is the absolute linchpin of the whole system for a professional.
It truly is. And to understand why this works, we have to look at the architecture of the system. Remember, the brain of this AI, the massive neural network required to do this level of reasoning, it doesn't actually live inside the little box on her belt.
No, it couldn't fit.
Right. The waste unit is far too small, and a battery would die in 10 minutes if it tried to house the kind of processing power required.
So where does it live?
The actual intelligence, the AI model itself, and the massive private knowledge base of the firm's history lives on a dedicated physical base station back at Lee's office, or even securely in her home. It is a literal box of servers she owns.
So the obvious question is, how do the belt clip and the base station talk to each other without compromising privacy? If it's just over standard 5G or Wi-Fi, isn't that vulnerable?
They communicate through a highly secure point-to-point encrypted wireless link. But it goes much further than just a standard Wi-Fi or cellular connection. This system utilizes hardware-level silicon encryption.
Okay, let's translate that. What does hardware-level silicon encryption actually mean in practice?
Normally, when you use a software app, the data is encrypted by the program before it sends it. But software can be hacked, it can be updated, or compromised. Hardware-level silicon encryption means the encryption key is physically burned into the microscopic silicon chip inside the waste unit itself.
So it's hardwired.
Yes. When Lee speaks into the headset, the analog sound of her voice is converted into digital data and then mathematically scrambled by that physical chip into unbreakable code before it ever leaves her physical body.
Wow.
It travels over the radio link as pure, meaningless static. It is only decrypted when it reaches the matching physical silicon chip on her private base station.
Meaning nobody can intercept it?
This means that even if a highly sophisticated hacker intercepted the radio wave transmission in the air, they would just get random noise. Her voice data, and more importantly, her client's deepest secrets, never travel unencrypted. And most crucially of all, they never touch the public internet.
So why does this matter so deeply for a professional? We all know privacy is good, but why is this specific architecture absolutely non-negotiable for someone like an architect, or a lawyer, or a doctor?
It matters because of the strict rules of professional ethics, legal privilege, and liability. Think about the very nature of an architect's daily work. Lee is having highly sensitive financial fee discussions. She is managing heated, potentially litigious site disputes with contractors over millions of dollars.
She knows things before they're public.
She is developing proprietary design strategies for major developers who haven't announced their projects yet. This sensitive data simply cannot be legally or ethically handed over to massive cloud server companies.
Because they'll use it.
The business models those companies rely on ingesting all user data to train their next generation of public AI models. The standard terms of service for most major cloud AI tools today are fundamentally incompatible with professional client privilege.
So if you use a public AI for a client document, you're in trouble.
If you upload a client's confidential financial document to a public cloud AI to summarize it, you have likely just breached your non-disclosure agreement. Intern 100 solves this completely by ensuring the intelligence is entirely localized.
It's closed off.
It is a closed loop. The practitioner owns the data, owns the model, and owns the hardware.
That is a massive fundamental distinction. It is not a software service she subscribes to that harvests her data as payment. It is a physical tool she owns outright, like a very smart, very secure hammer. So let's see this tool in action.
Yes, let's put it to work.
Let's walk through the triage process, because this is where the abstract theory turns into absolute visceral magic for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed. Set the scene for us. Paint the picture of a normal morning with Intern 100.
Imagine it is mid-morning, say 10:30 a.m. Lee is physically trapped in one of those necessary but highly draining 2-hour client meetings.
We've all been there.
She is in a glass boardroom. She is dealing with a difficult developer, trying to explain why the city rejected their zoning variance. She needs all of her emotional intelligence, all of her focus, completely zeroed in on the people across the table.
Right.
But while she is in this room, completely cut off from her desk, her email inbox is quietly exploding. Hundreds of emails are pouring in. The mechanical engineer has a clash on the HVAC. The city council wants a revised form. A supplier just noted a massive delay on the steel order.
But in the boardroom, her belt isn't buzzing, her phone isn't vibrating on the table, her smartwatch isn't tapping her wrist.
Exactly. Intern 100 sits on her belt in total absolute silence. But it is not dormant. Back at the base station, the system is actively reading every single incoming thread in real time.
It's going through the flood.
It is analyzing the text, figuring out which of those 5 demand categories we discussed earlier it falls into. It is automatically filing the documents into the correct project folders. It is continuously updating its own private database of every project's status based on the new information.
So it's doing the busy work.
It is doing the first pass, the heavy, grueling mechanical triage that would normally devour Lee's entire late morning and early afternoon the second she stepped out of this meeting.
And during this silent background triage, the absolute nightmare scenario happens. The case study highlights a highly specific incident with an email from a client named Mr. Smith. Walk us through this and let's really feel the tension here, because this is the perfect distillation of mechanical throughput versus creative judgment.
Mr. Smith is an angry, high-net-worth client. While Lee is in the boardroom with the developer, Mr. Smith sends a highly escalated, aggressive email. He CCs half his executive team, demanding to know why his specific project hasn't reached stage 2 yet. He is threatening to pull funding.
Oof, that is a classic focus-shattering event.
It is. On a normal day, if Lee was at her desk and saw this pop up on her screen, her heart rate would instantly spike. Cortisol would flood her system.
Panic mode.
She would have to immediately stop whatever complex design she was working on. She would have to frantically dig through 3 different nested folders on the server to find the current accurate plans. She would have to write a highly delicate diplomatic email, calming him down, carefully wording it to avoid admitting fault while still being placating.
Which takes a lot of mental energy.
She would attach the heavy PDF files, send it off, and then sit there with a racing heart. It would completely derail her for at least half an hour, plus that 20-minute neurobiological reentry cost we discussed earlier.
It would ruin her morning. But she is in a meeting. She can't do any of that. She can't open her laptop in front of the developer and start putting out Mr. Smith's fire.
Exactly. So instead, she uses the quietest, most subtle interface imaginable. The meeting takes a brief pause while someone pours coffee. Without leaving the room, without breaking her train of thought for more than 5 seconds, she reaches down, presses the physical button on the waist unit, and whispers a single sentence into the headset microphone.
What does she say?
She says, "Mollify Mr. Smith. Send him the latest plans. Acknowledge his call. Remind me to follow up in an hour."
One whispered sentence. That's it.
That is the absolute totality of her input. Let's deeply analyze how the system divides the labor in this exact moment, because this is the crux of the entire technological innovation. Intern 100 handles 100% of the mechanical throughput.
Okay, walk me through exactly what happens after she whispers that.
The voice command is encrypted, sent to the base station. The base station accesses the private knowledge base. It instantly locates the specific, up-to-date project file for Mr. Smith. It retrieves the most current mathematically accurate drawings that prove the project is actually on track despite his anxiety.
Because it already read them and filed them.
Yes. It then drafts a highly customized, entirely truthful response that addresses Mr. Smith's specific concerns. And it writes this email in a professional tone that perfectly mimics Lee's own historical correspondence style. It attaches the massive PDF plans, hits send, logs the entire interaction in the centralized project file so the rest of the team knows it happened, and sets a silent internal timer for 1 hour to remind Lee to call him.
It is acting as the perfect frictionless buffer. But wait, let me push back here. Put yourself in Mr. Smith's shoes. I send a furious, demanding email. 4 seconds later, I get a perfectly formatted 4-paragraph response with a 30-megabyte PDF attached. I am instantly going to know it's a bot. I'm going to feel managed, and I'm going to be even angrier because it feels like Lee isn't taking my concerns seriously enough to respond herself. Doesn't that instantaneous speed actually destroy the human trust you said was Lee's core value?
That is a brilliant point, and it highlights why the system is designed to mimic human rhythms, not just machine efficiency.
Oh, so it waits.
The intern doesn't send it in 4 seconds. Built into the system's logic is an understanding of professional pacing. The AI drafts the response instantly, yes, but it holds it in a queue. It waits a natural amount of time, perhaps 12 or 15 minutes, before quietly dispatching the email, simulating the time it would realistically take a human to read the email, find the file, and draft the response.
That's incredibly smart.
Furthermore, because it has been trained entirely on Lee's private archive of past emails, it doesn't sound like a generic customer service bot. It uses her specific phrasing, her structural habits, even her typical sign-offs. To Mr. Smith, it is indistinguishable from Lee herself sitting at her desk.
That is incredible. So it manages the psychology of the client, not just the data. But we have to emphasize what Lee actually retained in the scenario. She offloaded the typing and the searching, but she retained the expert judgment.
Precisely. The intern did not autonomously decide how to handle Mr. Smith when the email arrived. It didn't take it upon itself to email him. Lee made the strategic, creative decision in that 5-second whisper.
Right. She told it what strategy to use.
She assessed the situation and decided that the correct strategic move was to mollify him with hard, irrefutable evidence, the plans, and that a personal follow-up call in an hour was the correct relationship management tactic to de-escalate his anger. She provided the high-level judgment. The intern executed the grueling mechanics of that judgment.
This brings up a really important boundary condition of this technology. What Intern 100 inherently cannot do, because
Right.
this isn't a story about replacing the architect. We aren't talking about AI designing buildings and putting Lee out of a job, are we?
Not at all. The case study is incredibly clear on this hard boundary. The intern cannot make design decisions. It possesses absolutely no spatial intelligence. It has no taste, no aesthetic intuition, no understanding of how natural morning light interacts with a poured concrete texture.
You can't feel the room.
Exactly. It cannot sit in the city council meeting and read the body language of the zoning board members to see if they are receptive to a variance. And most importantly, returning to professional ethics, it cannot lie or invent facts.
This is a huge point.
In the Mr. Smith scenario, it absolutely did not invent a fake stage 2 completion date just to make him happy in the short term. It operated strictly and exclusively on the factual, real data provided in the private database. It is a massive force multiplier on mechanical tasks, but a strictly silent, entirely subservient partner when it comes to human judgment.
A force multiplier on the mechanical. Now, I know what you are thinking if you're listening to this on your commute or, while you're washing the dishes. You're probably saying to yourself, this sounds absolutely amazing. I want one right now. But it sounds like pure science fiction.
It does sound like magic, yes.
Right. Having a hyper-intelligent, completely private, offline AI that perfectly understands the entire 15-year history of my firm, never makes a mistake finding a file, and drafts perfect emails in my exact voice. That sounds like a technology 50 years in the future.
And that is arguably the most surprising and exciting revelation in this entire discussion. It is not science fiction. Every single individual technological component required to build the Intern 100 system exists right now, today.
Wait, really?
Yes. It is entirely possible to build this today.
Yeah.
Let's demystify the tech stack, piece by piece, to show how close we actually are.
Yes, let's break it down so it doesn't just sound like magic. First, voice recognition on a headset. I mean, we've had this for over a decade.
Easily. The algorithms for converting speech to text, even in noisy environments like a construction site or a busy street, are incredibly robust and reliable.
Right. And second, the secure, encrypted wireless link from a belt device to a local base station. As we discussed, this is standard encrypted phone engineering. The physical hardware to do this, the silicon chips, is small, cheap, and entirely proven in the military and enterprise security sectors.
But the third piece is where the real magic happens. This is the intelligence. How does it actually know Lee's business so flawlessly? How does it avoid the hallucinations that plague public AI models where they just, confidently make up fake information?
Yeah, how does it know not to lie?
This localized accuracy is achieved through an existing technology called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Okay, let's really unpack RGA, because it sounds jargon-heavy, but if you want to understand the future of professional work, you really need to understand how this works. Explain it to me like I'm 5, but don't lose the nuance.
Gladly. In simple terms, a standard public AI model, the ones everyone is using in their web browsers today, is like a very smart, very well-read person who has memorized the entire public internet, but who knows absolutely nothing about you, your specific company, or your private projects.
Right, it knows general facts, but not my facts.
If you ask it about Mr. Smith's building, It will just guess or hallucinate an answer based on generic architectural trends. Retrieval augmented generation fundamentally changes that architecture. It allows you to take a powerful foundational AI model and pair it with a locked private library of your specific documents.
So how does it actually read that library? Does it just do a keyword search, like finding the word Smith?
It's much deeper than a keyword search. You feed it your past emails, your project files, your complex contract documents, your previous design decisions. The system reads all of this text and converts every sentence, every concept, into mathematical coordinates in a high-dimensional space.
Mathematical coordinates.
Yes. This creates a highly structured, searchable vector database. It essentially maps the semantic meaning of your entire professional life.
Okay, so it's turning a 20-page PDF about acoustics into math so the AI can understand the relationships between the ideas.
Exactly. It maintains a living list of the firm's entire history. So when Lee whispers the prompt, "Mollify Mr. Smith," the system does not just blindly generate text. The retrieval part happens first.
Ah, I see.
It dives into that mathematical vector database and retrieves the specific, highly relevant documents, Mr. Smith's historical file, the latest PDF plans, the timeline. Then the augmented generation part happens.
Okay, how does that work?
It feeds only those specific factual documents to the language model and instructs it. Draft an email using only this retrieved data. This strict constraint is what prevents hallucinations and ensures the intern operates exclusively on factual, practice-specific reality. ORAG is not theoretical. It is a highly proven technology being used in advanced enterprise environments today.
So to use an analogy, it isn't like having a giant box of Lego bricks where you have to build the AI from scratch. It is more like having a master chef, the AI language model, who is incredibly skilled at cooking. But they are locked in a kitchen where they are only allowed to use the specific ingredients from your private, highly curated pantry, your vector database.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. They can't run to the supermarket and grab generic, hallucinated ingredients. They must cook with what you provide. The chef exists. The pantry exists. The genius of this concept, this architecture of restraint, is simply having the vision to put them together in a closed room and strip away the screen.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And the impact of putting that master chef in the closed kitchen, of snapping those existing technologies together into a private system, is profound. Particularly when we look at the ultimate goal here.
Which is mitigating professional burnout and facilitating creative restoration.
Yes. We have to look at how this changes the end of the day. Let's contrast the fictional intern experience with the grueling standard practice we discussed at the very beginning.
Right. Let's revisit the standard practice. It's 5:00 p.m. The final Zoom meeting of the day is over. Lee sits down at her desk, physically and mentally exhausted. Her brain is just fried from context switching.
Completely depleted.
And now she has to face the mountain. She has to do all the chasing she couldn't do while in meetings. She has to manually summarize the dense engineering documents that arrived at 1:00 p.m. She has to draft the fee proposals. She's facing 3 hours of rote administrative labor before she can even look at a blueprint or think about design.
It's soul-crushing. But with Intern 100, the transformation at 5:00 p.m. is extraordinary. When Lee sits at her desk, the storm has already been handled.
Because it's been working all day.
The intern's silent, continuous background triage means that all the needs-chasing emails have already been tracked, logged, and automatic follow-ups have been queued. The dense 20-page acoustic compliance documents have been read, analyzed via RAG, and summarized into 3 clear, actionable bullet points waiting on her secure desktop.
That alone is worth its weight in gold.
The necessary mechanical replies, like the one to Mr. Smith, have been drafted, sent, and documented. The immense friction of the mechanical throughput has been entirely, quietly removed from her day.
Which means her cognitive energy, her RAM, is completely preserved. This is how the system restores the architect's creative focus. She can sit down at 5 p.m., or better yet, because she isn't buried in admin, she can sit down at 2 p.m. and actually do the deep design thinking at the office.
Yes, during normal working hours.
She isn't forced to squeeze her genius into a 7.0 p.m. window in a desperate, lonely race against burnout.
The long-term mental health impacts of this shift simply cannot be overstated. By removing the daily, grinding administrative friction, you are essentially buying a professional's life back. And it is crucial to note that automation in this specific context doesn't exist to make Lee a faster architect.
Right, it's not about doing more jobs.
Exactly. The goal of Intern 100 is not to force her to output twice as many building designs per year. turning her into a hyper-productive machine for late-stage capitalism.
Yeah.
It makes her a deeply focused, less exhausted human being.
It's about quality of life.
It allows practitioners to finally, sustainably prioritize creative design and expert judgment over administrative throughput. It treats human attention not as an endless resource to be mined, but as a sacred, finite resource that must be protected at all costs.
It is a complete paradigm shift in how we value human capital. Now, if you are not an architect, if you haven't looked at a blueprint in your life, you might be wondering how this specific technology applies to you. Who else is this for? Because the concepts here expand far beyond designing buildings.
They apply to almost every high-level profession.
The use cases are massive, and it is thrilling to think about how this could fundamentally transform the broader professional world. Because, as we noted, anyone whose core value is derived from deep specialized judgment, but whose days are eaten alive by mechanical throughput, is essentially living Lee's life right now.
Absolutely. Let's step outside of architecture and deeply consider the medical field. Think of a senior surgeon. A surgeon's core value, their literal life-saving, highly trained judgment and physical dexterity, happens exclusively in the operating theater.
Right, while they're actually in surgery.
But modern medicine, specifically the advent of electronic medical records, has buried surgeons under an absolute mountain of administrative throughput. After a grueling 6-hour procedure, they have to spend hours writing detailed post-operative notes.
Clicking through boxes.
Yes, clicking through dozens of drop-down menus for compliance reporting, navigating complex insurance authorizations, and coordinating care plans with multiple other specialists. It's a massive, dangerous misallocation of expert cognitive resources.
It's the equivalent of making a Formula One driver change their own tires and negotiate the sponsorship contracts while they're actually driving the car.
Exactly. Imagine that surgeon with an Intern 100 on their belt. They finish a complex craniotomy. They are exhausted. They step into the scrub room, press the button, and simply narrate the surgical outcomes in plain English.
What would they say?
We encountered unexpected bleeding at the temporal lobe, successfully cauterized, patient stabilized. The intern, accessing the patient's private, highly secure medical history via the RA database, instantly formats that narrative into the required formal operative report.
Oh, wow.
It flags the necessary post-op medications for the pharmacy system and summarizes the critical vitals and updates for the attending floor nurses. The surgeon's time is instantly free to focus on resting or preparing for the next patient rather than staring at a keyboard in a fluorescent-lit office.
It's incredible, and I can see how it would be equally transformative, if not more so, in the legal profession.
Oh, absolutely. Consider a senior barrister or a trial lawyer. A barrister's genius is constructing a winning, highly nuanced legal argument based on precedent, strategy, and human psychology.
That's what they get paid for.
But their actual days are often swallowed by drowning in dense briefs. They spend hours upon hours parsing through thousands of pages of discovery documents or case law, terrified of missing one crucial footnote and drafting endless mechanical correspondence to opposing counsel just to establish timelines.
It's just moving paper around.
Yes. A localized, completely private system like Intern 100 could ingest a massive million-page case file. It would cross-reference it against specific downloaded legal databases, instantly summarize the salient points regarding a specific motion, draft the initial highly formatted responses to opposing counsel, and relentlessly track the endless scheduling logistics of the court.
Think about your own inbox right now. If you're listening, think about how much of your mental RAM is currently being used just to remember that Dave in accounting owes you a spreadsheet, or that you need to follow up with a vendor by 3:00 p.m.
It's a huge burden.
That is the exact cognitive leak we are talking about. You could apply this to general practitioners trying to keep up with patient histories. You could apply it to head teachers running schools, buried in standardized testing compliance.
Or small business owners.
Yes, small business owners who are desperately acting as their own HR, accounting, and marketing departments simultaneously. The delegation of mechanical throughput to private automation will completely, irreversibly evolve how we define professional roles as a society.
It forces an evolution because it shatters an old illusion. For decades, we have collectively conflated being busy with being productive.
That's a great point. We think if we're stressed, we're working hard.
We have culturally accepted that highly trained experts must spend 60 to 70% of their time acting as highly stressed, high-priced administrators. By severing the mechanical throughput from the creative judgment, by handing the mechanics to a silent machine, we are allowing professionals to return to the pure essence of their craft.
We are stripping away the noise. So to really bring this all together and summarize the incredible journey we've been on today, we started by looking clearly at the crushing, fragmented reality of top-tier professionals. We examined the 5 concurrent streams of work, the punishing, unavoidable burden of being the trusted bottleneck, and the absolute chaos of an email avalanche that destroys human focus through the brutal neurobiology of endless context switching.
It's a heavy load. And we saw how the proposed solution of profound architecture of restraint embodied by the conceptual Intern 100 flips the script entirely.
Completely.
By utilizing proven existing technologies like voice recognition, silicon-level hardware encryption, and retrieval-augmented generation, we can create a completely private, localized, and silent entity. A tool that absorbs the mechanical load, the triage, the drafting, the reading, and the chasing, while fiercely, quietly protecting the human's creative focus and expert judgment.
It is ultimately about buying back your life, turning a chaotic, entirely reactive existence into one of proactive design, preserved energy, and actual peace of mind. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a provocative thought.
A little something to ponder.
Something that wasn't explicitly covered in the technical breakdown, but is the inevitable, deeply human next question we all have to face. If a system like Intern 100 actually works, if it successfully strips away 80% of our mechanical tasks, all that administrative busy work we constantly complain about, but if we are truly honest with ourselves, secretly used to feel productive, to check boxes, and to justify our long hours, what happens to our professional identity?
It is a genuinely daunting question. When you strip away the heavy administrative armor that we all wear, there is nowhere left to hide.
Exactly. When all the emails are answered, all the chasing is done, and all the files are sorted, when we are finally left with nothing but the quiet, expansive space to exercise our pure, uninterrupted, expert judgment, will we actually be ready for the immense pressure of pure creative focus? Or will we find, strangely, that we miss the comforting distraction of the chaos just a little bit?
It's a fascinating thing to consider.
Something to deeply mull over the next time you find yourself answering a routine email at 7:00 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a fascinating journey to explore with you. Take care of your focus, and we will catch you on the next one.